evening. I declare the Ordinary Council meeting of the 25th of August 2026, held in Council Chambers at Level 2, 388 Hay Street, Subiaco, open at 5:30 p.m. Good evening, councillors, staff, members of the public and the media. On behalf of the City of Subiaco, I acknowledge that the land we're meeting on this evening are the traditional lands of the Whadjuk Noongar people, and I recognise their ongoing connection to the land and waterways of Subiaco. Taking attendances now, we've got two councillors on approved leave, which looks a little bit bare to my right. So Councillor Burns and Councillor Pine are on leave, and Councillor Powell is attending with, attending electronically with prior approval. So good evening, Councillor Powell, and everyone else, as you can see, is here in person. Looking at who we've got from the executive leadership team here to assist us, it's a full complement of a CEO and 4 directors and a number of staff to assist them also. Councillors, leave of absence requests. Are there any to submit this evening? Nope. Okay, disclosure of interest. Councillor Powell, disclosure on C1. Councillor Powell, you're on mute.
Okay. Sorry, I'll start again. Okay, thank you, Mayor. I, Rick Powell, wish to declare an interest in agenda item C1 to be considered by the Council at its meeting on the 25th of August 2026. The type of interest I wish to declare is impartiality, pursuant to clause 22.2 of the Code of Conduct for Council members, committee members and candidates. The nature of my interest is I know the family of the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you. Were there any other disclosures, Councillor O'Connor?
Thank you. I, Penny O'Connor, wish to declare an interest in agenda item C1 to be considered by Council at its meeting on the 25th of August 2026. The type of interest I wish to declare is impartiality pursuant to clause 222 of the Code of Conduct for Council members, committee members and candidates. The nature of my interest is I'm friends with the neighbours at 123 Heytesbury Road and have discussed the application with them. I know the family of the applicant socially and have discussed the application with the applicant. I have a second declaration. I, Penny O'Connor, wish to declare an interest in agenda item C2, the leasing matter for Subiaco Play Centre Incorporated, to be considered by Council at its meeting on the 25th of August 2026. The type of interest I wish to declare is impartiality pursuant to clause 22.2 of the Code of Conduct for Council members, committee members and candidates. The nature of my interest is I am an employee of the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage, which manages state land, but have no decision-making responsibilities in this regard.
Thank you. Any other disclosures? Councillor Fife.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. I, Daniel Fife, wish to declare an interest in agenda item C1 to be considered by Council at its meeting on the 25th of August 2026. The type of interest I wish to declare is impartiality. The nature of my interest is that I'm friends with the applicant and the immediate neighbours.
Thank you. Any others? Councillor De Vries.
Yep, I, Rosemary De Vries, wish to declare an interest in agenda item C1 to be considered by Council at its meeting on the 25th of August 2026. The type of interest I wish to declare is impartiality pursuant to clause 22.2 of the Code of Conduct for Council members, committee members and candidates. The nature of my interest is I have previously spoken to the neighbour of the applicant at 123 Heytesbury Road, but I am not a friend. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others? Okay, we'll move on. There were no public questions taken on notice previously, so we'll move to public question time, beginning with a question from Snezana Vandergraaf of Roydhouse Street, Subiaco. Ms Vandergraaf, welcome back.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Megan. The Lord's Recreation Centre remains an important asset for the Subiaco community, yet many areas, including the flooring, swimming pool covers, reception space, and several other sections, are showing clear signs of age, despite recent painting efforts. Could you clarify how much funding is earmarked in the upcoming budget to modernize this much-valued local sports facility owned by you, by City of Subiaco, by us?
Thank you. Director, Development Services.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor, and thank you for your question. Lords is really valued by our community. It has a long and storied history, and this provides some important context as to understanding the future capital works. So the buildings that now comprise Lords, they were constructed in the 1960s, and they were for a transport and logistics depot. And they operated in an industrial area for about 20 years. And then in the 1980s, the buildings were converted to house indoor cricket, and hence the name of Lords, and that's where it came from. Following this, Lords became a Laurie Potter Health Club, where members could purchase a $99 lifetime membership. After that, Kerry Stokes purchased the Lords in the 1990s, and it was home to the Perth Wildcats as their training facility until about 2008. When that stopped, in 2009, the City of Subiaco purchased Lords, and we reopened the centre for a community, and we inherited the buildings that were on the site and that they were initially designed as a transport depot. So Lords isn't one building, but it's many put together through its many manifestations. So while it has a great community spirit and growing membership base, there are structural limitations and cost benefits to be considered in a full modernisation process. So to have Lords operational, the city invested significant funds to replace the roof in 2014. So this meant that the facility had to close for a period. We lost some memberships and sports teams. But since this date, the city has worked really prudently to reduce the operating deficit of Lords through increasing both usage and membership. And we're carefully balancing capital investment as we do that as well to improve the facility. So for the 2025-26 financial year, the city has allocated a budget of $300,000 for capital investment in Lords.
Thank you. Your second question. And if you'd press the button as well to make sure everyone watching at home can hear it.
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can now, and so
Thank
can the
you.
people at home. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. How much did it cost to do the external renovations of the Subiaco Library? And for comparison purposes, what is the measured gross floor area of the existing Subiaco Library and the existing, now empty, council chambers at 241 Rockaby Road, respectively?
Thank you. For that question, I'll ask the Director of Corporate Services to answer.
Thank you for your question. Through you, presiding member, I'll answer in two parts about the library and then 241. Opened in 1971, the Subiaco Library is a recognised local heritage place and community landmark known for its bold architectural design. To preserve and renew this important community asset, the library underwent an external refurbishment between 2023 and 2024 at a construction cost of approximately $2.1 million, excluding professional fees. Construction costs have increased significantly, and it is important to consider the narrow scope of this work, particularly as the Subiaco Library remains fit for purpose. The works included roof, mechanical, hydraulic upgrades, facade and joint repairs, landscaping and compliance improvements. These works renewed the asset, addressed deterioration and moisture issues, protected the building's footings, preserved its heritage value and ensured the library remains fit for purpose for the community. Based on the available building area information, the Subiaco Library has an estimated total floor area of approximately 1,060 square metres, comprising of public areas on the ground floor at 690 square metres, back of house areas, storage and utility areas on the ground floor, approximately 151 square metres, and then staff work area and storage in the mezzanine floor, approximately 220 square metres. regarding 241 Rockaby Road, as outlined in the response to public open questions on 28th of July 2026, soon after its construction in the 1960s, the building was deemed unfit for purpose, resulting in 3 extensions that alter the design, compromising its integrity and contributing to water ingress issues. Numerous reviews were undertaken since more recently Council resolved in February 2021, item C7, 23rd of May 21, to engage consultants to investigate potential refurbishment and development options for the 241 Rockaby Road Council Administration Centre for Council's consideration. In September 2022, the building was damaged by fire. In December 2022, Council resolved item C7, 13th of December 22, to demolish and rebuild 241 Rockaby Road with some additional requirements. The 241 Rockaby Road Council Admin Centre building has an estimated gross floor area of approximately 1,300 square metres, excluding the undercroft area. However, gross floor area does not necessarily reflect the amount of space that is currently available for use. Parts of the building remain unavailable due to fire damage and associated restrictions, including all staff accommodation areas and the Mayor's office. At present, the areas that are available for use, including meeting room 1, 2 and 4, the committee room, the council chambers, toilets and the undercroft. In accordance with Council Resolution in April 2026, item C6, 24th of April 26, the City is developing a business case, updated design brief and project management plan to support the next stage of decision making, and the City has engaged Human Urban to assess the existing building at 241 Rockaby Road, including whether it's suited to refurbishment and or adaptive reuse or demolition. This analysis work will be included as an option within the business case. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Connolly, and thank you, Ms van der Graaf, for the question. The next question comes from Chris van der Graaf of Roydhouse Street, Subiaco. Mr van der Graaf. Oh, he can't attend. Okay, Ms van der Graaf.
It's me, yeah. I see.
Asking a question on Chris's
Yes, so
behalf.
it's me again, sorry.
Okay, 2 questions. Thank you.
Yeah, so the questions are coming back to issue of Lords. For the 2024-25 financial year, the City reported that Lords Centre generated 785,000 more revenue than budget, primarily because of membership growth. What was the total revenue generated by Lords Recreation Centre in the last year? Because the membership numbers have grown. And what is the total operating expenditure for the same year? And as a result, what is the resulting net cost or surplus to ratepayers when we exclude depreciation and exclude capital expenditure?
Director of Development Services.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. So for the 2025-26 financial year, the Lords Recreation Centre revenue was 4,912,843 and expenditure was 4,946,815. So that results in an operating deficit of 33,972. So these figures do exclude depreciation and corporate overheads, and that will be finalised as part of our annual end-of-year process. So the Lords Recreation Centre operating subsidy, that's decreased substantially over recent years, and that needs to be considered in the context of Lords itself and the community-focused services that we have and the pricing that reflects that as well. And that's compared to an intention from other private centres to maximise profit. So that's definitely not what we're doing in Lords Recreation Centre. So making health and wellbeing accessible to a wider range of people, that assists in proactively keeping people healthier and reducing the burden of future medical costs, which are in any way subsidised by taxation. So in addition to Lords in indoor recreation setting, the City makes a significant contribution to the provision of outdoor sport, and that's done through recreation across its parks and reserves. So that's not included here as well.
Just the
Thank you, Ms van der Graaf. Question 2. Can you? Well, I mean, we don't usually have follow-up questions, 2 questions, but since you've asked it, can you press the button so that we can record it and live stream it?
Yes, absolutely. I just want to double check because I'm not sure that the figure that you have disclosed is excluding depreciation and excluding capital expenditure.
Mr. Petrovsky.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Yeah, so that excluded both depreciation and capital and corporate overheads as well.
Thank you, Mr. Petrovsky. And Ms. Van der Graaf, the second question submitted by Mr. Van der Graaf, please.
Yes. So here I have a figure that the city reported 555,000 patrons in the year 2023-24 with over 3,000 members. So I think you answered the question, what was the capital expenditure of Lords in 2025? I think you mentioned 300,000. What are the membership numbers today? What is recorded number of court users who were not Lords members, including casual users and visitors? And if you don't have these figures recorded, what is the city's best estimate of their monthly or annual attendance?
Mr. Petrovsky.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. So the answer that I quoted previously for the 300,000 capital, that's for this current financial year that we're in, so 2026 and 27. But I'll answer your question on the previous financial year. So capital expenditure on 25-26 totaled 88,268. So at the end of that financial year, our membership numbers totaled 3,315 active members. And on top of that, another 1,127 fitness passport members as well. So it's another program that we offer at Lords. So we have about 300 sports teams who play regularly in our competitions throughout the year. And when I was looking at the monthly facility attendance over the past year, the lowest, and that was really an outlier, was 43,000. And we get up to 58,000 attendance figures per month, but it normally is sitting in around that 55,000 figure per month, depending on the season and the period as well, and the school holidays and such. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Petrovsky, and thank you, Ms. Van der Graaf, for the questions. Okay, a question from Barbara Millech of Seddon Street, Subiaco.
Hello. Okay. As a long-time resident of Subiaco, I am concerned to know what the council is developing in order to protect the amenities of neighborhoods, particularly those in heritage areas. For example, I note the loss of amenities at 4 Kings Road, and 107 Hammersley Road, both developed recently and the latter now sold. And in regard to the development at 129 Haighesbury Road, I note that there are the same concerns, even though the block size doesn't present the usual constraints of block sizes in Subiaco, and even though the sewerage line to the eastern side of the property was part of the title and known at purchase. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Development Services.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Thanks for the question. The planning system is primarily set and determined by the state government, but it does allow for local governments to use policy in guiding development at a local scale and level. So in this regard, the City of Subiaco is an industry leader, and we have a mix of local planning and heritage policies, and they tailor development controls based on the local characteristics of the area. The city has received industry awards for its heritage area policies. So the Park Street Heritage Area policy is one recent one, and also for developments in heritage areas. So one Subiaco on Seddon Street, which I'm sure that you're aware of, which demonstrates the city's efforts in urban planning. So each application is assessed on its merits and in accordance with the legislation and the planning framework as it applies. And for each application, the controls and policies which apply, they're referenced in the report to Council, for example. So I do understand that you made a submission during the consultation for 129 Heytesbury Road development application. And for this application, the city received 33 submissions in total. So 16 were in support and 17 objecting. Submissions are one of the many considerations, and a response to the matters in your submission that were detailed in the report that was presented to the 24th of Feb Ordinary Council meeting for this matter. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Petrovski. Okay, we'll move on to public statement time. We've got a number of statements on item C1 this evening. I'll take them in order, beginning with Petra Flory of Hensman Road, Subiaco. Ms. Flory. Okay, doesn't look like she's here, so we'll move on to Helen Reid. Has she authorised you to make her statement in writing? Okay, I assume Governance Services have a copy of that. So for the record, your name and street is? The button to your right, please.
Can you hear me? Yep. I'm Jennifer Neri and I'm in Heytesbury Road. Would you like me to start?
Yes, please.
Okay. So this is a statement for Petra Flory, who is my friend and neighbour. Thank you, Mayor McMullen, Deputy Mayor and councillors. I'm the owner of Unit 1, 112 Hensman Road, and have lived there for 41 years. For the past several weeks, I have been in hospital recovering from major surgery and an infection, so I'm hugely grateful that a Heytesbury Road neighbour, that's me, who values the Subiaco community spirit is willing to read my statement to the council meeting. In my statement to council in February 2026, I said that the proposed development at 129 Heytesbury Road would have a negative impact on the quality of my life due to its towering height and impact on sunlight in my garden and property. The latest plans do not make a single improvement to the impact on my property or on me. All it does is clarify the extent of that negative impact from building height and overshadowing. And that negative impact is significant. I am horrified that the council is being asked to consider a new development application when the changes proposed are so trivial and inconsequential to me and others. I am so disappointed to see the council's planners recommend approval again when it's effectively the same plans with no significant changes. As a pensioner, I am dependent on the planning team and you as councillors to represent my and the community's interests. Your decision in February was the right one. Please stay with that decision and reject the application before you again. Thank you in anticipation.
Thank you for the statement. Okay, a statement from Helen Reid of Heytesbury Road, Subiaco. Ms. Reid.
Thank you, Mayor McMullen and councillors. I have owned and lived at 123 Heytesbury Road for the last 25 years. I am the closest eastern neighbour to the development and most impacted by it. The plans before you are the outcome of a supposed mediation. I say supposed because successful mediation is about exploring and expanding options to find a solution that is suitable to all parties. I know that from my professional background in mediating workplace conflicts. Successful mediation does not mean the solution remains unchanged, yet that's what we have here. When I compare the original February plans with current plans, I see no discernible difference. The tiny differences only become evident from enlarging the officer's report and plans to A3 size, allowing the fine print and coloured notations to be read. As that report states on multiple occasions, the changes offered are only minor. So how minor are they really? The setback change offered is shorter than the length of this credit card. The reduction offered to the 1 metre raising of natural ground levels is barely the length of this lead pencil. And the building wall height reduction offered is not even 2/3 the length of this school ruler, Subiaco Primary School, you can see. The changes offered, even cumulatively, won't be detectable from the footpath or neighbours' backyards. To quote the officers again, the report states that the changes marginally improves the perception of building bulk. Forget about perception, let's talk reality. Our reality as neighbours, living in the shadow, literally, of a massively oversized development in length, height and proximity that breaks the rules. Not a single change has been proposed that addresses the huge loss of amenity to our prime outdoor living areas and rear yard. And no one has consulted us on the changes. No one even asked if the concrete render replacing the green trellis was better. It's not, it's worse. So to put it simply, the plans for 129 Heytesbury Road on a huge block don't even come close to meeting code requirements or address our loss of amenity. Roof form and pitch also do not meet heritage requirements. The owner's heritage and design justification in these plans comes at the expense of our loss of amenity. There is not even any urban infill or higher density.
Ms Reid, I'll let you finish, but just so that you know and everyone else knows, the system will give you a warning at 2.5 minutes and cut out at 3 minutes, which is what just happened, but I can see you're almost at the end, so please press your button and finish the statement.
Just to be clear, we do want development next door. We just ask that it meets all the planning rules and addresses loss of amenity. The council rejected the plans in February on solid planning grounds. In every regard, the plans before you this evening are no different. Those experienced with SAT consistently tell us there is no risk a SAT determination will deliver a development worse than this. So please don't base your decision on fear or fatigue, but on solid planning grounds. Please stand by your February rejection decision. Thank you.
Thank you. A statement from Steve Allarding of Allarding and Associates to be read by Mal Cook.
Thank you. Dear Mayor and Councillors, Council previously made a clear and considered decision to refuse the application, citing unacceptable outcomes for building height, boundary setbacks, site works and heritage impacts associated with elevated floor levels and the introduction of a roof form and pitch inconsistent with the established heritage character. The amendments made following mediation are minor. The officer's report identifies only a 200 mm reduction in wall height, a 60 mm increase to the eastern setback and a 180 mm reduction in finished floor level. The critical question before Council is not whether changes have been made, but whether those changes adequately address the reasons the application was originally refused. In our submission, they do not. The proposed eastern wall remains approximately 6.5 metres high and only 1.7 metres from the eastern boundary. The officer's report acknowledges these provide only marginal improvements to perceived bulk. A substantial wall remains adjacent to our client's primary outdoor area, with the same fundamental bulk and scale amenity concerns unchanged. The site works also remain problematic. The dwelling remains elevated above the existing heritage dwelling, creating an incongruous relationship with the streetscape and surrounding heritage context, including roof form and pitch. We are not aware of comparable single dwelling examples within the heritage area. Importantly, the report notes that the variations are in part necessary to facilitate retention of the heritage property. However, this comes at the expense of our client's amenity. The planning framework does not permit Council to trade one planning outcome against another. Rather, it requires both heritage protection and neighbouring amenity to be appropriately addressed, with both satisfying the relevant design principles and scheme and policy requirements. Heritage objectives should not be achieved at the expense of the reasonable amenity expectations of adjoining landowners. Both the Officer's report and the City's Heritage Service advice acknowledge that the amendments are very minor. That acknowledgement is significant because it confirms that the proposal before you is substantially the same proposal that Council previously found unacceptable. If the reasons for refusal were valid then, we respectfully submit they remain valid now. The proposal continues to rely on variations to the planning framework, while the key concerns regarding height, bulk, setbacks, site works, heritage outcomes and neighbouring amenity remain unresolved. These are defendable reasons for refusal, and if Council maintains the view that the development remains unacceptable, then refusal is the natural course of action. It's then a matter for the applicant whether they choose to test the validity of that position before the SAT at a full hearing or pursue further amendments capable of satisfying the relevant design principles and Council's planning framework. We respectfully request that Council reaffirm its decision to refuse the application. Thank you.
Thank you. A statement from Elizabeth Ownell of Christou Design Group. A statement on C1.
Please bear with my voice. Thank you, Mayor, councillors and the City. My name is Elizabeth Ownell and I'm an Associate Director at Christou Design Group. 129 Heytesbury is a unique property with both a heritage home and, importantly, an eastern garden recognised in the City's heritage listing. The brief was very clear. Protect the house, protect the garden, build at the back to save both, and respect the context. 129 is a very complex site. It falls 2 metres, a sewer crosses it, heritage homes and strata dwellings surround it. Despite that complexity, the amended design requests just 3 design principal pathways. The City's officers recommend approval for a second time, and Phil Griffiths, one of the state's most prominent heritage architects, the former chair of the Heritage Council of WA, says, and we quote, that this design will enhance the streetscape. I'm going to talk through the refusals. Refusal 1, height. The height has been reduced from 6.7 to 6.5 metres, and that is considered significant if you consider this room lowering. It sits 1.4 metres below the neighbour's ridgeline at 123 Heytesbury, 1.4 metres below, while the rear portion sits 2.18 metres below the opposing neighbour's property, and it presents as single storey from Heytesbury Road. Under deemed to comply, a design can overshadow up to 25%. This property overshadows just 7.2%. After mediation, we checked this, we resurveyed with a licensed surveyor to check the impact on the southern residents, Petra, and we confirmed via this licensed survey that there was minimal overshadowing to 1/112 Hensman. The other strata properties signed non-objections. As the city planners state, the southern neighbours' windows retain direct sunlight. Refusal number 2 on the eastern setback. I want to be very clear here that walls at the rear are actually very common, and we showed that in mediation. At the same time, we also respect how they impact. And critically, we do want to note that walls are actually allowed under the R codes in defined circumstances directly on the boundary. This design, however, is not seeking that. This design is seeking approval of a wall which is set back 1.7 metres over my height, and it is also offering high quality architectural finishes to that wall, unlike others in the neighbourhood. By comparison, the adjoining home sits just 0.9 metres or 1.2 metres from the same boundary. Refusal.
If you want to take a moment to finish up your statement, please do.
Refusal on site works and levels. Mediation lowered the ground floor by 180 millimetres, which is actually a whole step and quite considerable. The reduced fill also occurred at the eastern boundary. The proposed floor level of this new design is only 12 centimetres difference in height from the floor level of the opposing neighbour's heritage residence, 12 centimetres. Refusal 4 on the heritage streetscape. Following mediation, we lowered levels, we lowered the awning, we reduced fill and we lowered the height. As above, it is just 12 centimetres from its neighbour's finished floor. Importantly, this addition is set back 23 metres, so 12 centimetres is set back 23 metres the length of a pool. It exists in the background behind the restored garden, the heritage home, deliberately so that the heritage home and the garden could remain and respect the historic streetscape. Materials are of an unprecedented quality, refined and restrained. Heritage architect Phil Griffiths supports the bulk, the scale and the materials, which he states, and I quote, will allow the original 1915 house to be read as it was originally intended, maintaining the character of the streetscape. This is clear advice from the expert that the design and the materials respect heritage streetscape. And if there are any doubts about undue bulk, the numbers speak. This proposal retains 56.1% open space against a 50% requirement, maintaining the leafy character that we all love on Heytesbury Road. Mediation has not been minor and it required extensive rework and it required experts across multiple disciplines. This design offers a really rare and wonderful opportunity to deliver a high quality architecture to this street. It is going to be north orientated, supports passive surveillance to improve neighbourhood safety, which is eyes on the street, and it significantly uplifts the laneway, including a mature tree at the rear. It will accommodate grandparents, parents and children, exactly what we love to do as designers, and this project does not overpower its heritage setting, it invests in it. We ask Council to accept the recommendation of officers and we ask them to accept the state's leading heritage expert and offer approval. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Okay, I've got a statement from Emily Bethlehem of Heytesbury Road.
Good evening, Mayor, councillors and those sitting in the gallery. My name is Emily. My husband Thomas and I are the owners of 129 Heytesbury Road. On the 24th of February, our previous development application was refused by this council. Contrary to the city planning officers, contrary to Phil Griffiths, heritage expert, and contrary to the broader professional advice assembled around the design. We are a young family with 3 children, aged 8, 6 and 5. My husband Thomas runs a business in Subiaco and coaches at Subiaco Junior Football Club. I'm a clinical psychologist working in Subiaco. I volunteer countless hours at Rosalie Primary School. We are intimately involved in this community. We chose this 1915 dwelling deliberately, knowing its complexity because we love it, not to divide it, not to profit from it, to protect it. Since then, we have endured 6 further months of delay, expense and process. This is the busiest stage of our lives, with 3 young children under 9, demanding careers and deep community commitments. Despite every competing priority, we have put enormous time, effort and professional advice to this application. I would like to address a phrase from last week's briefing agenda characterising our amendments as minor. For 6 months, we have engaged additional professional services, planners, architects, surveyors, all to address the 4 key concerns of this council. On a proposal already recommended for approval by the city's own expert planning department, it certainly did not feel minor to us. To reduce the height of a wall, to increase a setback, to lower a finished floor level, to upgrade materials, to commission a further overshadowing survey to answer specific concerns raised in this chamber 6 months ago, 6 months of professional work. These are not, to us, minor amendments. We have responded, we have sacrificed, we have listened, we have done everything asked of us. Each of the 4 reasons for refusal identified by Council at its February meeting has been specifically addressed in the amended plans. We actively participated in 2 days of mediation as part of the SAT process, including site visits and detailed discussions of the plans to better understand the concerns raised and work collaboratively towards resolving them. Our architect and planner have worked diligently throughout this process to refine the plans, having regard to both the concerns raised and the applicable planning framework. These discussions and the refinement of the plans have involved the active participation of a number of elected members, city planning officers, and the city's independent planning consultant. Following this extensive...
If you want to finish your statement, that's completely fine.
Following this extensive process, the independent planning consultant now recommends approval of the amended plans. The leadership and governance of this suburb rests with this council. We would respectfully argue that this leadership carries a significant responsibility to support families such as ours who are trying to enhance this beautiful heritage precinct. We respectfully ask this council to approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we've had a statement submitted by Phil Griffiths of Griffiths Architects, but I understand it's going to be read by Tim Dawkins of Urbis. Mr. Dawkins.
Good evening, councillors, and thank you for allowing me to read Phil's statement with his permission. Griffiths Architects are heritage experts and have provided advice on the design, application, and have assisted in the mediation process. The development application went to council with a recommendation to approve by the planning and heritage officers. In mediation, the diverse views of 3 council representatives showed that they were not all of the same view. Mediation concluded with a recommendation from the officers and Joe Algieri, the city's appointed mediator, for the application to be referred to council for reconsideration with a recommendation that they approve the application. Concessions were made by the applicant on height and side setback to get a position that satisfied express concerns and improved the relationship of the new additions and the existing significant house. It is our assessment that the place is not harmed by the proposed work. The existing garden space is preserved and enhanced. The addition is set deep into the block and physically relates to it, and the remaining significant elements of the house will be conserved. The city's heritage officer concurs with our view. We note that there is some disquiet discussion in respect to the nature of the additions and the articles of the Australian Icamos Borough Charter. The intent of the Article 22 is to avoid new elements masquerading as historic ones, and for new work to be respectfully applied to the existing. The clause is reproduced below. Article 22, new work. 22.1, new work such as additions and other changes to the place may be acceptable where it respects and does not distort or obscure the cultural significance of the place or distract from its interpretation and appreciation. 22.2, new work should be readily identifiable but must respect and have minimal impact on the cultural significance of the place. In response to 22.1, that it is designed to ensure that significant parts of the place are preserved and enhanced, which the scheme does. 22.2 recommends that new work is readily identifiable and respects the place. I, Phil Griffiths, knew James Kerr, who was a principal author of the Borough Charter, and his clear intent was to avoid replication. To that extent, where people felt compelled to be similar to the original object, he was wanting something to indicate that an addition was contemporary. His preference was for good, contemporary, sympathetic design, and that is what has been done in this situation. Thank you.
Thank you. A statement from James Christou of Christou Design Group.
Thank you. This home has been curated around heritage. A lot of iteration in the design was about how to protect the heritage aspect of this particular site. It has been reviewed by respected heritage and planning professionals, as well as the city-owned officers. It's been recommended for approval. Most importantly, this proposal provides a future for significant heritage property, a future where the original home and its garden remains the focus. It started in 1915, we add into that journey, where old and new are respectively integrated, and where continuing investment protects both the house and its garden for generations to come. A maintained future, an occupied future, a preserved future. Throughout this process, we have worked collaboratively. We have responded to concerns. We believe the issues raised through this process have been generally addressed, and mediation was its final course. And there's now a clear basis for Council to support the proposal. Accordingly, we respectfully ask Council to support this recommendation and approve the application tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for the statement. The next statement comes from Tim Dawkins of Urbis.
Good evening, Mayor and Councillors. My name is Tim Dawkins. I'm a partner at Urbis, a town planning company in Perth. I'm here to explain why the proposal, as amended, warrants Council support. I was engaged after the application was originally refused and have since worked with Christo Design Group and Griffiths Architects to refine the proposal in response to the Council's reasons for refusal. The City Planning Officers tonight have recommended approval, in the same way they have recommended approval in February this year. Since original refusal, the applicant team has participated in extensive mediation in good faith, including 2 formal State Administrative Tribunal sessions in this room on the 25th of May and another one on the 11th of June. These sessions allowed the proposal to be reviewed by elected members and planning officers and the City's independent planning expert and led to targeted amendments. I thank all who attended. It was constructive and it was purposeful. The intent was not to redesign an unacceptable scheme, but to respond directly to 4 matters raised by Council. During this exhaustive mediation process, there was an opportunity for all elected members to attend and engage on the final resolution on the plans. And in fact, during the mediation, no dissent was made or any question was made or negative commentation was given to the proposal as is now presented. Following mediation, further independent review by Joe Algieri and the City have design refinements have produced an amended proposal that have assessed the original reasons of refusal, and that has also been supported by the City's heritage officers and Phil Griffiths, who have remained positive throughout. The amended proposal responds to each of the refusals as follows. Height and bulk. The eastern wall has been lowered and now sits below the maximum height of the neighbouring dwelling. Updating modelling confirms that only 7% of the overshadowing to the property to the south, well below the 25% as required by the R codes, and importantly does not impact on any area relied on for direct sunlight. The eastern setback has been increased to 1.7 metres. The wall has no major openings, eliminating overlooking, and has improved materiality and finishes. Site works. The ground floor has been lowered and now closely aligns with the floor level of the eastern neighbour. This is a practical minimum before affecting the sewer main. The works lower the building in landform and help maintain a single-storey presentation to Heytesbury Street while enabling rear access from the laneway to vehicles below. Floor levels and heritage significance. With the reduced floor level, lower awning height and approximately 18 metres setback from the street, the new dwelling facade remains subordinate to the heritage dwelling and the garden setting. In simple planning terms, the dwelling is lower, more setback, less visually intrusive and remains supported from a heritage perspective. It preserves and celebrates the 1915 heritage dwelling, retains and enhances the garden setting and delivers a high quality addition and improves both the streetscape and the laneway. For these reasons, I respectfully ask the City to concur with the officer and Joe's recommendation.
Thank you. Okay, the final statement was submitted by Jackie Greenshields of Salisbury Street, Subiaco. Ms Greenshields.
Good evening, Mayor, Councillor, CEO and staff. Having been actively involved in Subiaco's heritage protection for 2 decades, including preparing streetscape documentation in 2010 and working to secure heritage area designation for Kings Road and the Rupert Salisbury Street heritage area, I know firsthand how easily intact streetscapes can be eroded by individual isolated decisions. Before reviewing the submission, I asked Council to consider the fundamental context of this site. 129 Heytesbury Road lies within the Union and Redfern Street heritage area. As one of the Subiaco's pioneer heritage precincts, originating with Rawson Street, This 2013-15 designated area encompasses an interconnected group of historic streetscapes, including Rawson, Union, Redfern, Campbell, Hammersley and Heytesbury Road. It was established specifically to protect the collective scale, rhythm and setting across the entire precinct. The Union and Redfern Street Heritage Area functions as an intact urban fabric where individual buildings derive their significance from the collective relationship to one another across the surrounding streets. This aligns directly with Articles 8 and 22 of the Borough Charter, as well as the City of Subiaco Local Planning Policy 3.3 Heritage Areas, which mandates that new work must respect and retain the visual setting of an historic area and remain subordinate in scale, height and bulk. Presenting a large contemporary built form immediately alongside the existing dwelling with existing glazing, it breaks the established spatial rhythm of the streetscape, dominates the original home and creates an unacceptable loss of amenity for the adjoining eastern neighbour. The purpose of heritage protection is not simply to retain individual front facades, but to preserve the integrity of the whole heritage area. Approving an addition of this excessive scale, bulk and stark visual contrast is in a foundational precinct sets a damaging precinct that progressively erodes the historic setting. I ask Council to evaluate 129 Heytesbury Road as part of the wider Union and Redfern heritage area, uphold the character of this pioneer precinct and refuse the application in its current form. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us to the end of public statements. There were no petitions or approved deputations this evening, so councillors, I'll ask you to confirm minutes of previous meetings, being those of the Ordinary Council meeting on the 28th of July 2026. Do I have a mover and a seconder to accept those minutes as a true and correct record? Councillor De Vries moving and Councillor Jones seconding. Will be voting by all items this night by show of hands. All those in favour? Okay, the minutes are accepted unanimously, which tonight means a vote of 7-0. Announcements by the presiding member. I would like to announce that one of our staff members reached a significant milestone in their employment with the City of Subiaco this month. This month marked 5 years since Colin Cameron commenced as Chief Executive Officer of the City of Subiaco. On the 16th of August 2021, in fact, I believe you began. I know that because I looked on the city's old news stories and saw a great photo of you and my predecessor. You looked a lot younger, but I looked a lot younger in 2021 as well. But over the past 5 years, Colin, you've provided steady, values-driven leadership and you've overseen an ambitious transformational project across our organisation built around modernised internal systems. I think you've shown high-performing executive leadership and you've built a great executive and staff around you as well. I must say, leading a local government staff of approximately 300 people while navigating the complex priorities of a local government like ours is no mean feat. It's no small task, sorry. So I would like to congratulate you on behalf of Council and thank you for what I think has been a collaborative partnership between Mayor and CEO over that time. I hope the staff put on a morning tea for you last week, or if not, I hope they will. And there's no right of reply tonight, but safe to say you've enjoyed every moment of it and can't imagine anything else. But in all seriousness, thank you, Colin, and here's to the next couple of years. Oh, thank you to the people in the back. Okay, councillors, we will now get into some decision making this evening. Normally, I think here we would consider an en bloc vote. However, there's only 3 agenda items and 2 of them need to be considered individually. So there's really no utility in an en bloc vote. We'll go straight to the reports for debate. Starting right at the top with C1, we've got the officer recommendation for approval of the development. We've had an alternative submitted by Councillor O'Connor. and a disclosure by Councillor Power which doesn't preclude participation in the debate. There were two. There are a number of disclosures provided this evening. None of those will preclude debate this evening, so I'll look for a mover and a seconder on the officer recommendation for C1. Councillor Fife moving, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Jones seconding. Councillor Fife.
Thank you, Mayor McMullen. Fellow councillors, it is important to be clear about what this development seeks to achieve. The applicants are restoring and celebrating a long-neglected, beautiful heritage home in one of Subiaco's most significant heritage streetscapes. There is no intention of diminishing or desecrating heritage. A major part of this development is celebrating heritage, bringing a heritage dwelling back into pristine condition and ensuring its long-term contribution to the Heytesbury Road streetscape. It is entirely reasonable that the applicants seek to add a substantial extension. They are a growing family and purchased a double block to give themselves room to both enjoy a substantial extension as well as having a garden. They seek to juxtapose a modern light-filled extension to complement a heritage home. On the front page of the West Australian today was a photo of Jackson Pollock's Blue Poles, and it's coming to Perth in a couple of months' time. When it was acquired by the Whitlam government in 1973 for $1.3 million, there was a huge outcry. Today, it is regarded as a treasured and iconic artwork valued at over $500 million. The Sydney Opera House was similarly roundly lambasted during its construction, yet it's now one of the world's architectural masterpieces. Modern art or architecture can be disruptive, but it often becomes the next generation's heritage. And that is what we may have here. I believe that the design works well with the original dwelling. The vertical lines of the long windows and doors create a rhythm and proportion that echo the symmetry of the original facade. The contemporary elements do not compete with the heritage. They sit behind it, complementing the established architectural language rather than overwhelming it. In my view, the design adds to the heritage ambience of the property. The applicants have worked with the city planning staff, including heritage officers, from the outset. The new additions sit 23 metres back from the Heytesbury Road boundary, and because the double-storey component is deep within the sloping rear portion of the block, it presents to the street as a single-storey form. Landscaping will further soften the view. Through mediation, changes have been made to address all of the refusal grounds made by us in February. The changes are not major, and that is understandable. The proponents had already worked extensively with city officers and heritage experts to ensure that the original design met the city's requirements. The reconsideration process has refined the proposal further. Some of the reasons for potential refusal that are foreshadowed in the alternatives are setbacks. The city routinely allows variation to setback provisions. The adjoining property at 123 Heytesbury is set back 1.1 metres when the deemed to comply requirement is 1.9. For 129, the setback has been widened to 1.7 metres. There is nothing to be concerned about here. Shading is only 7%. Bulk. From the street, the passerby will see a beautifully restored heritage home and 23 metres to the side and rear, the alfresco facade, which is less than 4 metres high and 8.5 metres wide. The bulk sits deep within the sloping block, behind and below the alfresco facade and the heritage dwelling. Most of the bulk is not visible from the street or out of proportion for a renovation on a double block that also includes a rear garage. The finished floor levels at the rear will differ by less than a foot from the front. This will be barely perceptible. It is 23 metres off the road and will be screened by vegetation. Site works. This is a sloping double block. The design responds to that slope, which is precisely why the addition presents as a single story from the front. What are the consequences of a refusal? If this modified application is again refused, the applicants will likely go back to SAT, and whichever way I look at it, the outcome will be worse for all involved. SAT may approve, and then it's out of our hands. A SAT-imposed approval would not be subject to the detailed conditions we as a city can impose tonight. If we refuse and win at SAT, the outcome may be far worse. The owners could abandon their plans, amalgamate the two lots, creating a land holding over 700 square metres, and under anticipated R-code changes, that would allow for a 3-dwelling subdivision with reduced setbacks and far greater built form intensity. Refusal tonight will exacerbate neighbour tensions. This matter has already created stress and conflict within the immediate community. A further refusal prolongs that dispute, imposes additional financial and emotional costs on both the city and the applicants and the neighbours, and extends the period in which neighbours remain in opposition. We would be prolonging a dispute that has already gone on for too long with no guarantee of a better outcome. Approving the modified plans tonight allows this matter to conclude, enables restoration of the heritage home to proceed, and avoids the ongoing stress and division that a return to SAT would inevitably cause. The proposal before us is compliant. It restores a heritage home. It has been improved through engagement with the city officers. It enhances the heritage ambience of the site, and it avoids a far more intensive future redevelopment scenario. Approving it tonight is the most responsible, balanced and protective decision we can make for the heritage character of Heytesbury Road and the amenity of surrounding residents. I support the officer's recommendation.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a vexed issue for this council. At the previous meeting, when we considered this application, I initially spoke in favour of the officer recommendation, but I was subsequently persuaded by the arguments put forward by other elected members, and I eventually voted for a refusal. As I suspected at the time, the applicants subsequently appealed our decision to the State Administrative Tribunal, and we've now gone through a mediation process which has resulted in a set of amended plans for this council to consider. We've heard multiple objections to these plans from residents, and I have to say that I'm sympathetic to their concerns. I have no doubt that this building will loom large over the rear of the block and will have an impact upon the adjacent neighbours. However, the fact of the matter is that the plans have been professionally assessed by our planning team, and they determined the plans to be consistent within our current planning framework, that being LPS 5 and LPP 1.1. On that basis, the officers have recommended that the council should approve this development application. Now, if we were to reject this application a second time, I'm confident that the applicants would appeal our decision to the SAT again. They've demonstrated their commitment to this development not only by their first appeal to the SAT, but also by their FOI requests on the councillors who voted for the initial refusal. Therefore, we need to be very confident that the SAT would uphold a second refusal, and I don't think that we can be. The tribunal will need to be satisfied that our decision to refuse has been made on sound planning grounds, which means that we would need to prove that the city's planning officers have made errors in their assessment of this application. We've received expert advice that this is highly unlikely to be successful. We'd be spending ratepayers' money trying to find fault in our own award-winning planning team, who've now assessed this development twice and have doubtless used their best and most experienced planners to come to their recommendation. This seems like folly to me. It seems like our choice here is to draw a line under this issue by accepting the officer's recommendation, or to spend lots of ratepayers' money on a futile contest in the SAT. Either way, this building will end up being approved, and the Bethlehems will have to live with the neighbours who've been objecting to it so vociferously. In conclusion, I support the officer recommendation, albeit with a heavy heart. As elected members, we have multiple roles. We're expected to represent our community, but we're also required to act in a quasi-judicial capacity, and sometimes these roles can conflict. When making decisions such as these, we are bound by the planning framework, and our decision must be based solely upon considerations within that framework, regardless of how much we might sympathise with the objectors. Therefore, as I'm unable to find any valid planning reason which could stand a chance of being upheld on appeal, I have little choice but to support the officer recommendation.
Thank you. Do I have a speaker against the officer recommendation? Councillor O'Connor.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor McMullen. Back in February, Council determined not to support the original application for this development. And one of the reasons given at that time was that refusal created an avenue for the applicant to explore amending their proposal to address key concerns, including the changes to natural ground levels, site works, floor finishes, building height and setbacks, all of which impact the amenity of neighbours. It would also enable them to reconsider the roof form of the extension in relation to its impact on the streetscape of the Union and Redfern heritage area. The applicants chose to take the refusal to SAT and then entered into mediation through that process with council, and I want to thank them and other parties for their engagement during that process. However, the original design that was considered back in February is largely before us again tonight, with, as the agenda paper states, only minimal, minor or very minor changes. In some cases, those changes are a reduction of 6 centimetres. The largest is 20 centimetres. These changes will not be visible to the naked eye, and I do not feel that they substantially address or go to the heart of the concerns that Council had previously. The application is still seeking quite significant discretions beyond what is deemed to comply under the R codes. And while I think it's reasonable for a development in these circumstances, particularly with the constraints of this block, to be afforded discretion, and let's be real, discretion's needed in almost every development in Subiaco. But in this instance, I still feel the requests prioritise the owner's needs and wants and disproportionately impact those of neighbours and the wider community. And the discretions that are being requested under the design principles are not 20 centimetres here or there, we're talking metres, as shown in the agenda papers. The cumulative effect of these discretions is a proposal that is still of significant bulk and scale, matters that we hoped would be addressed through mediation. The main reason Council's considering this item tonight is because the property is in the Union and Redfern heritage area. So for me, that means weight has to be given to heritage considerations. It's the lens through which this proposal needs to be viewed. While I commend the owners for the work they propose to do to conserve the original building and acknowledge the effort that will involve, the primary purpose of a heritage area listing is to conserve a streetscape. That involves not only conserving the original buildings that make up the historic fabric, and particularly their exteriors, but also making careful decisions about infill development and extensions. And in this, we're guided by the words in our local planning policy for this heritage area. And that sets out an expectation that additions will be, and I quote, in harmony with cultural heritage significance and the area's established character and visual amenity. What that actually means when you break it down is expectations that additions will be in harmony with cultural heritage and in harmony with established character and in harmony with visual amenity. They should ideally meet all those 3 expectations. And these expectations are even more important on this unusual site, which is a double block, so the extension is not just at the rear, it is to the side. I'm concerned that in considering the merits of this application, more weight has been given to supporting an extension with a contrasting design that, yes, avoids imitation, over considering whether the design is actually in harmony with the heritage area. Because I do not believe you can argue that it is in harmony. It is in contrast, as stated in the applicant's own original submission and the Heritage Officer's report, the City's Heritage Officer report. Yes, there are harmonious elements to the design, the rhythm of the windows on the front elevation, perhaps, but that is not the same as being in harmony with the cultural heritage or established character of a whole area. The parapet roof on this edition, which presents as a flat roof, is demonstrably different to the historic visual rhythm of the streetscape and the heritage area, which is characterised by pitched roofs. Even though it's recessed, it will still be highly visible from the primary street. I'm also concerned that insufficient emphasis has been given to the new fabric being evident on close inspection, and greater importance has been given to the additions being innovative and contemporary. I don't feel these issues should be equally weighted. Heritage areas are designated because they're important, and we want to conserve them. Like any heritage place, a heritage area is vulnerable to unsympathetic incremental change. That's precisely why we have policies that seek to look after them. If I can have an additional 2 sentences.
Yeah, please do. Let's not take too many liberties tonight, councillors, but I think it's important we make our points on this matter. So please wrap up if you can, Councillor O'Connor.
We should expect the very best high quality of design in our heritage areas, and for me, this proposal does not meet that expectation. I also feel it does not meet the wider community's expectation, which we as councillors also represent. Unfortunately, because I would very much have liked to reach a good outcome through mediation, I cannot support the recommendation.
Thank you. Do I have a speaker for the officer recommendation? Do I have a speaker against? Councillor Powell.
Sorry, Mayor, I'll be speaking for the officer recommendation.
Okay, thank you, councillor. Please go ahead.
Look, I think this is the fourth time a development application has been before council for 129 Hastings. And each time, like tonight, it's been accompanied by a passionate argument about whether it should be approved or not. 4 years ago, a development application was finally approved after a SAT mediation, but it never went ahead. This current application, which is for an even bigger house, has also been to SAT mediation. There have been some changes, as tonight there's disagreement about how substantial those changes are. But look, when you're planning something as big as this, it's bound to have an effect on the amenity of the neighbours. I think, as Councillor Jones pointed out, because of our generally small block sizes, it's almost impossible to build a two-storey home in Subiaco without it having some amenity impacts. So for me, the question becomes how much is too much? And that is a delicate judgment because all parties have a right to amenity. So a couple of points. If this development application was not in a heritage area, it would not be coming for council. Planning officers would have decided its fate without any council involvement. And it's clear by their report that they support this application. When this proposal is deemed to comply with the R codes, well, the majority of it does, and if it does conform with the R codes, there's no grounds for approval, whether we like its bulk or scale or not. In fact, that's the case with any planning application that comes to council. They're all judged on the same criteria of the same planning laws. And as a council, we sit as a quasi-judicial body. Our personal likes or dislikes really can play no part. We must abide by the planning laws and reach a decision on valid planning grounds. That's not to say we can't have different views, but the decision itself must reflect the planning rules. So as we've heard tonight, there are 3 areas where the applicant is seeking discretion, which may provide the grounds for refusal. That's the lot boundary setbacks, 5.13, the building height, 5.16, and the site works. Look, these are assessed under the design principles, and the design principles basically are subjective. They're more like a value judgment, albeit by experienced planning staff. But that's really what we're deciding upon, whether these discretions are appropriate or not. One of my concerns was the southern neighbour in the initial application, and again this time. And as her statement said tonight, she is concerned about overshadowing of property. We have the applicant saying that, look, they have addressed the overshadowing problem that was with the previous application, and that no living area of that southern property will be overshadowed even in midwinter. There are independent reports as well saying that, and so are staff. So although I recognise the fears of that southern neighbour, after hearing much evidence and discussion, I think I'm comfortable accepting that the evidence is that there won't be overshadowing of her living areas in the middle of winter. Then we have the next door neighbour whose amenity will be affected, and I think that's unfortunate because they did renovations and extensions, but they were undertaken when the council had a policy called the middle third, meaning it wanted the mass of the building in the middle of the block, the so-called wedding cake effect. With increased densification and multi-storey next to single residential, that policy has changed, pushing the bulk to the back of the block. Now, because of that policy change, whoever develops 129 will have to build near the rear of the block, which and that will impact the neighbour, especially that backyard area. Is that fair? Possibly not, but it's what the current rules say, so I don't know how we can change that. And look, I think that's probably a salutary message. When rules change, there are winners and losers, and that's a salutary message with the current sweeping changes that the state government is making to planning. There will be winners with all of those, and there will be losers as well. Finally, on heritage and streetscape, this will be different to the rest of the street. Whether it's in harmony is subjective. The applicant's heritage architect, a well-renowned person in the field, says it is, and so does the city's heritage section. And while there may be opposing views on that, the positive side is that a grand old dame is going to be restored to her glory. So really what makes this so difficult is this is nearly unique. It's a big development incorporating a heritage home over 2 blocks. But in the end, I do not think the planning grounds being put forward by those opposed to the development are sufficient to refuse it. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a speaker against the officer recommendation? Speaker for? Don't look at each other. Come on, I'm looking for a speaker. Councillor De Vries.
Look, I sit here tonight with, as Councillor Jones mentioned, a fairly heavy heart, but I also want to look at the range of issues that have come up this evening and place a little bit of value on the fact that this has really involved a lot of people in our community. It's involved the applicants, it's involved the neighbours, it's involved architects, specialists, people who have come together to really try and provide a very detailed and convincing summary of either, you know, we refuse it or we support it. So I have wrestled with this all day and written a number of different sort of points that I'd like to address, but I do think in discussing this, it's important for us to recognise that I'm comfortable with my previous decision. I'm not being, you know, I wasn't coerced, I'm not feeling fearful of making, which either way tonight, there is nothing like that. This is about making the right decision for our community. We have a quasi-judicial role. We also have to consider how many times this has come before us as a council. It has come to us many times. And each time I start to see different aspects of it. Yes, you know, I share the concerns of 123 that there will be, you know, some degree of overshadowing. And to be fair, I understand that the site, you know, it's a big site, therefore it's going to, as Councillor Fife pointed out, it's going to take up a lot of the block, which is why perhaps the applicants bought it in the first place. I also hope that mediation might produce an outcome which was a little closer to meeting the needs of everyone in the community. But I also take the point made tonight by one of the applicants that they were not minor. They were significant because it involved a significant number of decision makers. And I have no real life experience with building, but I know that in our discussions with architects on our city project, even small changes require a lot of input from different you know, the architects and so on. So I accept the fact that there has been a lot of work done by the applicant. I also want to acknowledge the passion that they have put into this and the fact that there is a real desire to keep the heritage and the original home. I think it could be that people just knock it down, and we've seen that all too often, and just knocking it down is the worst outcome. I also understand that the way that the additional extension was built has to follow the borough charter, and you know, a very eminent architect, Phil Griffiths, has made the point that that's the point of it. It is not meant to look like the original house. Perhaps if we didn't apply that, we could have put something much aligned with the original house. So the garden being maintained in, you know, mature vegetation, that's all really fantastic. I think
the additional work, I think, to reassure the neighbour at the back that there will be less overshadowing, and I actually do applaud the applicants for making sure that was done. But there are remaining planning concerns. You know, to my mind, there are still, you know, we could value judgment, you know, that we feel that the millimetres are not sufficient, you know, the changes of the eastern wall, the eastern setback, the site works. We could still sit here and argue to kingdom come, but I think it's probably due to the fact that making significant changes at this late stage would actually undo a lot of the work of the original design. So I somewhat accept the fact that these are not insignificant to the applicant. So I, you know, as I said, I'm not an architect, but I can see that there's been a lot of consideration. So in summary, I have really struggled with this. I have struggled with the fact that I was the person who put the amendment up, but I was satisfied with that. The alternate up last time. I think it was great that there was a SAT process, and I do believe that we shouldn't be arguing tonight saying, oh, we're going to fail at SAT anyway. I don't think that's the argument. The argument is, are we going to come back to this decision and cause a lot of stress and cost, and we come back with, you know, a number of changes, but not significant changes to warrant what would be an exhaustive process. And I can hear the genuine anguish in the applicants. I can hear the genuine the anguish in 123 residents, and I think it's a case of let's now weigh up what the advice is. We have award-winning planning staff. They've given us their advice twice. I think in this occasion, I'm moving to the side of supporting the officer's recommendation with a heavy heart. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Johnston, I know you haven't spoken. There is an opportunity if you'd like to.
Thank you, Mayor McMullen. Yes, look, I probably don't really have anything further to add. Really, I think everything's probably been said. Clearly, it's gone to mediation. It's come back. It's had some changes made. They're very minor. I think probably everyone hoped that there'd be something a little more significant from that mediation process that made it a more amenable and acceptable for the neighbours, particularly the neighbours on the eastern side that suffer the major impact to loss of amenity for them. And the other issue, I think, then, is that we have our own staff and planning experts that have given us the advice that this is acceptable and that we should be endorsing this and approving it. And then we have the other side where we look at the other grounds that this could be refused, and they're subjective. So it's giving due regard to amenity through the planning and development regs on clause 67. And how much due regard do we give that? And then there's the heritage. We have our own in-house expert on heritage who said, yes, this ticks the boxes, and we have our own views, and that's subjective about the importance of harmony to the streetscape. And I think, there's no question it stands out in the street. So that harmony element, I think that box isn't ticked. And then, of course, the design principles, again, there's a subjective element to that. So, I think that there's a conflict there between individual views that are subjective and obviously our staff and experts, in their view, those things are acceptable. And I find that difficult. And I think, as Councillor De Vries said, it's not we shouldn't be considering what the outcome at SAT might be. If it was to go to SAT, it should be on where our view is on the design principles. Thank you.
I'm the only elected member who hasn't spoken. I'll enter the debate. I'll speak for the officer recommendation. Everything that's been said already has more or less been said, but
think I owe half the room an explanation, and in a classic wedding type setup, I think you're all on one side of the room with the other people on the other side of the aisle. Look, I know for a fact that this development proposal and ones preceding it for this site have been given an extraordinary amount of analysis and attention by councillors. And now that the FOI has been mentioned, I hope the applicants found what they were looking for, but what they would have found is a lot of material, because that's how these councillors do their jobs. They don't just blindly rely on advice. I think ratepayers rightly expect us to rely on advice and exercise discretions where discretions are due, and I think that's what you're going to see tonight with the final vote. From my own perspective, if I had seen an opening from an independent or in-house professional advisor that gave us something akin to a sound town planning reason to refuse this application, I might be standing beside Councillor O'Connor tonight, flying the flag on that side. But the fact is, I haven't seen that advice presented to me, and I think we've got a responsibility to follow policy, follow planning frameworks, and follow professional advice. Not to blindly follow it, but only to chase rabbits down rabbit holes where our professional staff tell us that there is a hole to go down. Therefore, I think it goes without saying that I sympathise with all the different perspectives, just like every councillor does, and I will take, if there's a silver lining to this debate, I will take some pleasure from seeing a young family restore a heritage home, because I'm frankly going to back that almost any day of the week, as long as you don't destroy the character fabric of our heritage areas. So there's little more to say in debate. I will hand back over to the mover to close. That would be Councillor Fife, and then we'll put it to the vote.
Thank you, Mayor. In closing, colleagues, this proposal represents a thoughtful restoration of a long neglected heritage home and a contemporary addition that sits respectfully behind it. The modified plans improve setbacks, reduce floor levels, and strengthen the relationship between the new work and the original facade. Refusing this application would not deliver a better outcome. Approving the modified plans tonight allows this matter to conclude, protects the heritage dwelling, and avoids a far more intensive future redevelopment scenario. It is the most balanced and responsible decision available to us. I commend the officer's recommendation.
Thanks, everyone. I'll put that to the vote now. All those in favour of the officer recommendation? Okay, that looks like a vote of 4, and all those against? Oh, sorry, 4 in the room, and Councillor Powell, that was a vote for the officer recommendation, so 5, and all those against? Okay, a vote of 2 against, therefore the officer recommendation is carried and the development is approved. Thank you, councillors, and thank you to both sides of the room for your engagement with the city. Okay, I know we're going to lose much of our public gallery, and that's okay. We'll move straight on to C2 and wish those leaving a good night. The leasing matter pertaining to Subiaco Play Centre. We've got the officer recommendation to grant a 3-year lease to the Subiaco Play Centre Inc. And we've got an alternative submitted by Councillor Johnston to do something different. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the officer recommendation? Councillor De Vries moving, thank you. Councillor Jones seconding, thank you. Councillor De Vries.
This is a fairly straightforward procedural matter. You know, it's a leasing matter. It's about renewing a lease. I think we don't need to sit here and debate it. I think we have already had the opportunity to discuss it at the agenda briefing forum. I do believe that there are concerns about the fact that there will be a change, perhaps a change of venue in a few months' time. But I think it goes down to the fact that you need to give reassurance to the Subiaco playgroup that they will get their playgroup and that it's going to be an opportunity. I mean, we'll get their, you know, the continuing costing structure will remain. and, you know, come what may down the track, there might need to be a new venue, but I don't really think that there's any reason to not support it. I think we made changes to the cost of that a few years back, if I'm not wrong. So, yeah, I don't know that there's a huge amount to discuss on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I think it's a relatively straightforward matter. The playgroup provide a valuable service to the community, and I think it's important that we give them some confidence that they can continue operating in the manner that they've been operating thus far.
Thank you. Speaker against. Councillor Johnston.
I'd like to do a procedural motion to move to the next item of business, please, under meeting procedures, section 7.5.
Do we have a procedural? Do we have a seconder for the procedural motion? Councillor Fife seconding. Councillor Johnston, do you want to speak to the procedural motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor McMullen. Yes, there's been a number of questions from elected members at the briefing meeting last week and during the week. Some of those have been responded to, and thank you, but they've come quite late in the week for some of the elected members to really get across, and they haven't all been fully addressed. And some of the information has actually raised some other questions. This is not to disadvantage the Subiaco Playgroup in any way, shape or form. It's simply that there's questions relating to information from the Subiaco Playgroup and also other community groups that we haven't received yet to ascertain details on the relocation possibilities for groups at Shenton Park Community Centre while it's closed for refurbishment next year, and where they are best placed, where they will be best located, and to explore whether the Shenton Park Play Group could be relocated to the Subiaco Play Centre, and that would be equitable for both groups, and that it would be in line with our social property policy framework for objectives around equity and optimisation of our community facilities. And the procedural motion would simply give a bit more time for the questions to be fully addressed before we tie up this facility for 3 years under an exclusive use lease arrangement while we explore whether there might be a more suitable arrangement that would not disadvantage them in any way. And it could be through, I think CEO Cameron mentioned at the briefing meeting last week that there could be the possibility of a licence arrangement which the Shenton Park community groups use. So it would just allow a little bit more time for those sorts of things to be explored, and it's certainly not to disadvantage or change the financial situation for Subiaco Play Group, but to make sure that we have fully explored the options, and particularly Shenton Park Community Play Group, and that they could be housed in an appropriate manner that's equitable. Thank you.
Yeah, look, just to clarify what we're talking about, 7.5 of the meeting procedures was mentioned, and whilst that is relevant to moving to the next business, the procedural motion that's being moved, seconded and voted on in a second is actually stated at 7.1A. Before I put it to the vote, I'd like to ask the manager some questions. Mr. Guest, if you could tell us a bit about what level of consultation you've had with the Subiaco Play Group prior to submitting your report to council, and also if you've had any engagement with the Shenton Park Play Group about this agenda item or their future accommodation
needs.
Yeah, certainly, Mayor. Thanks for the question. Through you, the lease proposal that is before you tonight has been discussed with the Subiaco Playgroup. So we wouldn't put the proposal to you if they weren't comfortable with it. So they've advised us that they're happy with the proposal, and that's the proposal that you're seeing tonight in the report. In terms of Shenton Park, so obviously the Shenton Park Community Centre has been earmarked for refurbishment. The tender for that project is likely to go to market towards the end of this year. So assuming we award that contract at the start of next year, that property will be handed over to the builder, and the existing user groups will need to be relocated temporarily during that time. So my colleague, Lewis Twigg, he's been having conversations with the existing licensees, including the playgroup and the toy library, and assisting them make alternative arrangements during that period. Those arrangements haven't been finalised. We're in August now, so there's still a fair bit of time to go. We are assisting them, but nothing's been finalised. So certainly one option for the Shenton Park Playgroup is to use the facilities of the Subiaco Playgroup temporarily, and we don't envisage any issues with that. But again, it hasn't been finalised. It's one of many options on the table.
Okay. Well, I don't see anyone moving to ask their own questions, so I'll put the procedural motion to the vote now. All those in favour? All those against? Okay, the procedural motion's lost. Councillor Powell, did you vote for or against the procedural motion, just for the minutes?
I was going to say, Mayor, I wasn't aware that we were allowed to speak to a procedural motion. That was...
The mover of a procedural motion speaks to it, which they've done.
Yes, okay, look, perhaps it's their connection. Yes, all right, no, I won't be supporting the procedural.
Okay, well, the procedural motion still fails. Has everyone got that for minute taking? Yeah, okay, for the procedural motion. Just for minute taking purposes, who voted for the procedural motion? Who voted against? Yeah, okay, a bit of a delay, but the procedural motion was lost on a vote of 2 to 5. So we'll continue the debate. We are still on the officer recommendation. We've heard from the mover and the seconder. I did ask for a speaker against, and we went to the procedural motion, so we'll hear speakers against now. Councillor Fife.
I voted for the procedural motion because I felt that in our questions last week at the agenda briefing forum, several questions regarding the robust health of the Subiaco Playgroup and how they were tracking. I noticed that there was a couple of executive positions that weren't filled. They're a voluntary organisation. My major concern was that they were in good nick. It was pointed out that they hadn't responded to the previous invitation, that they hadn't responded to the previous survey of user groups that are beneficiaries of the city's what would you call it, the property social property framework response. So my anxiety about this was that I wanted to find out a bit more about the playgroup. In no way do I want to disadvantage them. I'm assured by by Joel, I guess tonight, that they are in good health. They have been spoken to. They do want to proceed with it, so let them go ahead.
Okay, speaker for the officer recommendation. Councillor O'Connor, thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor McMullen. Look, just very briefly, I mean, we're again, I don't really think that this is an issue that should require a great deal of debate, but it's worth stating that the Subiaco Play Centre occupies a building that we believe was purpose-built for a playgroup in the 1980s. It's not a multi-purpose facility. It has quite specialist provisions. It's got child-sized toilets and baby changing facilities. So it's not something that is going to be of great appeal for other users in the community. As we've heard from staff today, discussion is underway about possible sharing of the accommodation with the Shenton Park Playgroup. And it sounds like there are provisions under the mechanisms available to us to make that happen, regardless of whether we agree to lease or to give the Subiaco Play Centre an exclusive lease. So I don't have any concerns about progressing with that at this time. They've provided a really valuable service to local families since the 1970s, not always in this location, and I think it's really important that we actually facilitate them being able to continue to do that, and I wouldn't want to disrupt that in any way, so I support the officer recommendation.
Thank you. Speaker against? Councillor O'Connor. Councillor Johnston.
Look, thank you. Look, I'm not really speaking against. I was just, like Councillor Fife, really was wanting to have more questions that we'd raised addressed before we tie up the venue for 3 years on an exclusive use arrangement without knowing how much, how often it's used by other groups, how financially viable they are, etc. A number of other questions. And really, you know, how everything, how all of our social community groups, how they align with our policy framework, and that's you know, I think there's a piece of work there which can be done in the future, hopefully.
Okay, Speaker for the recommendation. Councillor Powell, I'm probably going to ask the mover to close in a second unless you wanted to speak to the item.
No, thank you, Mayor. I think it's quite well canvassed. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor De Vries, did you want to close?
Yeah, just to say, look, I'm pretty sure that the Subiaco Play Centre will be very excited. Did you want me to do that?
Well, I've asked the mover to close. Yeah, but I mean, I might have given you an indulgence to ask a question, but I didn't see it, and I've asked Councillor De Vries to close. You've already spoken, you're not disadvantaged, so whilst you may be disappointed, and I sympathise with you, it's Councillor De Vries who's got the microphone now.
Just to elaborate my point, which was that I'm sure there'll be some very happy fat mums and dads and young people who want to continue benefiting from this great play centre. But also I trust staff, that they'll come up with a good solution. And I think sometimes we don't need to stray into the operational side. Look, the city has a fantastic record of community involvement and activities. So in this area, I'm pretty comfortable we'll find a solution. Notwithstanding, we can always have a discussion behind the scenes at a workshop about anything that we might be concerned about. And of course, Councillor Johnston has every right to bring that up, and I think at a workshop at some point. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll call the vote now. All those in favour? All those against? Okay, the resolution is carried 6-1. I'm sure someone will let the playgroup know that they've got 3 years of accommodation locked in. Okay, that leaves C3, the financial statements and reports for the month ending 31 July 2026. This would have gone on block were it not for C1 and C2. There's no special voting requirements, no amendments or alternatives. Do I have a mover and a seconder for C3? Councillor O'Connor moving, thank you, and Councillor Jones seconding. Councillor O'Connor.
I don't need to speak to the item, thank you.
Councillor Jones.
Do I?
Doesn't leave much to vote on, but debate, but we can still have a debate if anyone wants to speak to the item. Doesn't look like it. Nothing to therefore close on. I will put C3 to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? Or no one? It's carried unanimously 7-0. Okay, elected members, that's the end of the officer reports. There were no elected member motions submitted with notice this month. There's no business of an urgent nature that I'm aware of this evening that needs to be decided by decision of the meeting. I'll therefore close the meeting at 7:15 p.m. Thank you, councillors, for your good work tonight and in the lead up to tonight. And thank you, staff, for the same.